Hello, this is a computer analysis of the Alekhine's defense. This is me playing against the level 10 Chess Titans computer, and the defense is against a king pawn opening, and then you play knight f6 and the king pawn attacks the knight. So this is a hyper-modern opening set forth by Alekhine, the fourth world champion of chess, and it's a hypermodern opening. The pawns are advancing on the knight and kicking the knight around a lot. The thing about that is that the pawns cannot move back. They are committed to moving forward and cannot move back, as where the knights are very mobile and can move wherever they please, given that they have a square to move to. So, with that being said, when the pawns advance past the center point of the board, there's a lot of weaknesses created behind them, and your opponent really has to defend these weaknesses, and thus he is not very able to attack you. So it kind of, even though in the opening of the Alekhine's defense your opponent is attacking your knight with his pawn and then attacks it again, and your knight has to move around, later on in the game, your opponent is then going to be on the defense where you are advancing on your opponent. So it kind of turns the tables on a traditional theory of the game. And this was actually one of the very first times that I tried the opening against the computer, and I didn't have to. This was pretty much my first attempt at defeating the computer with the Alekhine's defense. So that right there tells me that it's very playable, and I probably will play it in some of my games here in the future because it is so it's so good. I mean, it makes your opponent have to overextend. It's easy to gain a material lead with one of these pawns that he has overextended, and it just it makes your opponent have to have a lot of patience, and you as well. It makes for a very long, drawn out game, but you can definitely secure a win if you play correctly. But as for the initial moves where he plays the king pawn and you play knight f6, that move there is attacking the king pawn, so he either has to defend the king pawn or advance the pawn and attack your knight, and of course most people are going to advance the pawn and attack your knight. So right there you get into a very sharp line where it's very easy to study and study up on, the moves that are going to come from you playing knight f6 to the king pawn. So this opening or defense offers a lot of advantages if you are willing to put the effort into studying it, because it is so predictable as to what your opponent is going to do to knight f6. And I think that's why Alekhine, was so drawn to the opening, because he noticed that knight f6 to the king pawn isn't necessarily gaining an advantage over the king pawn. If anything, it might be a disadvantage because your knight is attacked and you lose tempo in the opening. But it's easily a draw situation if both parties play correctly. But because it's so predictable, you can study up on it and gain an advantage in your own right, and therefore defeat your opponent with the knowledge that you've gained through studying, what he is most likely going to do. And that's the goal of a lot of openings, is to force your opponent to do things that you have already studied before the game even started, so that you have an upper hand in the game. And the computer, I thought, handled this pretty well, and I am a pawn up, and that's pretty significant against the level 10 computer, and I'm able to win with this material advantage. And think about it, the idea behind the hypermodern school of chess is to create pawn weaknesses where your opponent overextends his pawns, and most likely this is going to result in a pawn advantage, which I've done right here. I forced the computer to capture my pawn for his rook, so now I'm not up pawns, but I do have a queen over his rook, and I'm able to, you know, win with this material advantage, which is about 4 pawns. And so yeah, I highly recommend studying the Alekhine's defense and any hypermodern opening for that matter. And the hypermodern school of chess is gaining a lot of popularity in the world of chess today. It kind of is getting away from the classical variations where, you know, if your opponent plays king pawn, you reply symmetrically, which would be, you know, a classical way of handling it. And now, you know, hypermodernism is kind of a way of, you know, being asymmetrical, where, you know, you're not replying symmetrically and you're getting your opponent to think, and you're forcing your opponent to do things that he otherwise would not like to do, and also forcing your opponent to go into variations where you have already studied and he has not. Now, if you are the white side of the Alekhine's defense, I would recommend still doing the book moves, you know, forcing the knight to move, and then, you know, playing perhaps d4, and you know, even forcing the knight to move again with c4 is fair game. But then from there, I recommend just defending your central pawns and staying away from any attacks that you think that you might have against your opponent, and, you know, just playing a very quiet game as white, and just trying to at least draw the game. And that's, you know, that's the best way to play chess, is just play for a draw, and then if your opponent makes a mistake, you know, punish him for it. And that's the way I play chess, is just wait for your opponent to make a mistake and then gain the advantage and win. So thanks guys for watching this, and I hope you learned something about the Alekhine's defense. Thank you so much.